the Education Lounge podcast.
Welcome to episode 10 of the Education Lounge. Today we are going to be looking at the changes that have recently been announced with regards to GCSEs and A-Levels.
So I downloaded a little sheet from the government website that talks about the changes, and the one word that's all the way through this is fairness. That they're saying they want to be fair to the children that are sitting the exam this year, and so they are giving them crutches effectively to get through this year because of all the disruption in the children's education. Government are expecting that exams will go back to normal from 2023. And I don't know how much you guys have read up on this or heard about it or looked at it. The changes were only announced yesterday, so I don't think that everybody has fully taken it all on board. But we've been looking at changes, and I think they've been talking about it for some time.
So the changes seem to be that they're letting them know, or letting the students know, and the teachers and tutors know about the specific topics that are being tested upon in the exam. So, for instance, maths, you receive I've downloaded one for foundation maths and higher maths, and they've taken out some of the topics.
They seem to have done the same for English and science, because I've been looking at English.
I mean, I knew for English, I've known that there's changes to the English, and I knew that that the maths we're going to receive the list at this time. But with English, I've known for some time, for instance, that they're not going to test the anthology poetry, which is kind of fair enough, I suppose.
They've said, I've just written it all down, that I've only looked at the AQA spec, and what they've said is they've reduced the time from 4 hours to 3 hours 25, and that's because some of the elements are being taken out. There is a poetry anthology.
Is it?
They've said paper 1, poetry anthology.
Does that depend on the school though? Because
it depends on the school. So paper 1, poetry anthology, 1P poetry anthology, 1N 19th century novel, 1M modern prose, which is what it was anyways. But what they've done is they said you only sit you have a choice of 2 out of the 3. So I know last year a lot of our students said the schools had dropped poetry. Yeah.
No, I mean I think that's a logical choice. If you were a school, then you'd want to. I think poetry anthology is the most to remember.
Yes.
Because you got 15 poems.
Yes.
And so that cuts down work.
Yeah. And then that was paper 1, and then paper 2, you have section A has Shakespeare, section B has unseen poetry, that's as well as a comparison of unseen poetry. So they have sneaked it in.
But that's the unseen component.
Yes.
So it doesn't really affect them in terms of what they need to remember. So I suppose that.
But we still need to teach how to analyse poetry. And there's no advanced list of, like for example in biology, I seem to remember they're not testing about eyes. So I need to remember, but I remember
We're not
that.
really biologists here.
But there's no advanced list that they're giving out for
Yeah,
English
no.
literature.
I guess it doesn't make sense.
But it's so limited anyway.
Because like you could say, oh, we're testing on this theme, on this novel, but it will just lead to people they could just students can just prepare for that exam based on that topic, and then they don't really need to think too much about the theme.
Yeah,
so
just go
you
in
can
and
see why.
regurgitate it, and then it doesn't work. And then English language, no change to the written exam.
Yeah, doesn't require.
But there is change to the verbal side of it, apparently.
the speaking.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, but I think most of this that tends to be quite a small component anyway.
Yes.
So it says here on the AQA website that for 2022 they're reducing the required subject content. Everyone's going to be assessed on Shakespeare, on a Shakespeare play, and schools and colleges can then choose 2 of the 3.
Yeah, well, from paper 1. which is
Anthology
what we
of
said.
poetry,
Yeah.
modern text, 19th century novel.
Yeah.
I think Shakespeare's like if you're doing English literature, then
You can't not
you
do
can't
Shakespeare.
you can't take Shakespeare out really.
No.
It's just unavoidable, really.
They're also reducing the total number of marks available from 160 down to 130.
Yeah, but that's reflected also in the fact that.
They've
So
got
what they're doing
questions
is they're keeping it in proportion, aren't they?
I don't think it makes.
I don't think it makes any difference.
It doesn't make. Well, it does make a difference, but it doesn't make as much of a difference as. It won't really reflect that much in grades being different, because unless you really love poetry, and then your school has cut poetry anthology, and you're like, oh,
And then you're in.
And then you're
that's
left
your
with-
strong suit. Then
yeah,
you're in trouble.
yeah. But I don't think it will matter that much.
No.
Well, then it's just reducing it so that they have less to cover
Yeah,
in class time.
but they still need to
But
have
with all the
the,
disruptions and everything,
yeah,
they want to reduce.
they still need the core skills. So of actually writing.
Yeah.
So
They've got nothing. They've got rid of none of the core
Yeah.
skills, like you say.
no,
So that's quite
it wouldn't make sense to do that anyway.
no.
Yeah, it's a shame that they miss out on poetry anthology, but in a lot of cases, because I think that will be what most schools cut in their teaching, and that's been our experience, I think, here.
Poetry is quite a difficult thing to teach. I mean, I love teaching it, but I do think that there are quite a few tutors, certainly, who find poetry quite difficult.
I think it just depends on the poem. Some students really gravitate towards poetry, and then some. I mean, most of them find Shakespeare difficult. I'd say that tends to be a difficult component, and then.
This is different. It's almost a different language.
But yeah, I've noticed that like some students are more comfortable with like a 19th century novel than they are with, So they're more comfortable with novels and long texts than they are with poetry, and then some of them are really, really suited to poetry.
Yeah.
And they like just the fact that it's so much less.
Yeah. Yeah.
They don't need to handle a whole book.
Yeah. So that's English, and then maths.
Well, I think it's a kind of a shame for maths, especially for the higher students, because if some of them want to do A-level, then it's a shame to cut down for those particular students who do go on to do A-level.
But all that will mean is when they come to A-level, there's that little bit. I'm sort of
They've got so much else to learn.
minimalising it, but yes, exactly. I
Yeah.
know, but it just means they've got that much more to learn.
Yeah,
A-level.
which is hard at A-level, because then you've got to cram in. I know they do some pre-level stuff and some revision and that kind of thing, but it's kind of a shame. The reason why we're talking so much about maths and English is because they're generally the most important subjects. So they're your core subjects. So sciences are important too. It's just maths and English
maths
is-
and English underpins everything.
Yeah. And if you look at like job applications and applications to college and stuff like that, then that's what they're going to look for is those minimum grades in maths and English language in particular. So we talked a little bit about literature, but language tends to be more important, and that's not being changed.
It's
really.
interesting that they haven't changed that, because they've said,
because it's entirely skill based stuff. It's not. It's not
Yes.
really. It's not based on. It is based on knowledge, but it's not based on like knowledge of a particular text.
no,
I
it
think.
is pure skill,
Yeah.
because it's all essay writing.
It's the hardest, probably the hardest GCSE. Of the.
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
No. I suppose
I
it
think
depends
it
on your
is.
skill
Person,
set.
yeah.
For me, it would be maths. For sure, it would be further maths. Forget it.
Yeah.
I
No,
find English harder.
I think English is very challenging, and it's reflected in the kinds of results that they get, like AQA, for instance. Because I think AQA English language is particularly difficult. That's the one that the majority of the schools do,
Yes.
and
I think
That's right.
probably the only thing that may be harder is IGCSE.
IGCSE is more. It's a bit strange. GCSE English.
Yeah, it's very.
Because like the schools can decide more about the route that the students take, but English language is hard because it's all unseen. So I found that people who really gravitate towards literature find language. So when they're really hard working and they like learning a text inside out and they're quite reliant on that, then they struggle when it's kind of it's about improvising.
Yeah, and
in
I
the
think
exam.
you've got to have the core skills, but you also got to know yourself. I think in terms of how you write,
Yeah.
etc. And that is, there's a lot of foundational practice stuff that needs to happen there. So it'd be interesting to see what the grades turn out like for English language this year.
Well, this is going to be the next thing compared to last year. Apparently, last year there were record numbers of higher grades because it was all done on teacher.
And it's hard for a teacher to fail a student.
Their own
That's really
student.
the thing. Yeah.
No, but that's so unfair, because every single teacher obviously wants to pass a student, but they're not going to pass a student for the sake of passing them, because there'll be checks in place.
Well, that's why they had them rank the students in ability.
Yes.
But you know, like anything like this.
But even beyond that, every single secondary school will have checks and balances in place, so that it's not just, the teacher has said so, therefore this is the grade they're going to get.
Yeah.
So
but I think they're more likely to be, like, you're more likely to get mistakes and lack of objectivity with anything that's assessed purely in that way.
So A stars and A grades has risen. This is from BBC. Have risen by almost 75% since 2019. Since the conventional exams were taken, has gone up by 75%.
Well, we were talking about it earlier. I was listening to the radio on one of my drives, and they were talking about an independent school in North London, a very prestigious one, girls' school, that I think it was their A-Levels they were talking about. They said that the grades, the A grades jumped from 30-something% to 90-something%. And then there was this whole debate of should there be private schools, and based on that.
But that's what I mean. Like, obviously, the checks and balances aren't good enough in most schools, like to be able to.
Yeah, but that's one school.
But I think like the fact that you've got a 75%,
75%.
yeah, that shows that it doesn't work. And I mean, it will be limited in terms of how. I mean, I think a teacher assessment component could be something valuable, because I think students need to learn that they can't just spend the whole 2 years doing nothing and then ace the exam and their teacher's feedback is not relevant. Because
Oh, it could get quite political here. Something comes to mind with regard to, school reports at Eton, but never mind.
but yeah, I think
Well, that's the thing with this year. It's sort of a hybrid thing. So
Yeah.
before you had just exams, last couple of years you've had no exams and
Now they're
just teaching,
graduate.
and now they're doing a mixture
Yeah.
of both.
Yeah, but it's only for this year. They're saying 2023, everything will go back to normal.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah, and the grades, they're saying, well, they've asked examiners to be more lenient, haven't they?
Yeah, what does that mean? Because
Yeah,
it's so
There'll
vague.
be
and-
guidelines. I don't think they've published them yet. I haven't seen them, but there'll be
I haven't looked
guidelines.
I haven't looked
I
into
know.
that
I know
yet,
that they'll just be low. They'll be lowering the boundaries.
Yeah.
but I think it's really difficult
But-
to be like, say, more lenient in a maths exam. How can you be
Yeah,
more
either
lenient?
is or it
like,
isn't.
like you either like they either hit those marks, like so
They
they're
don't.
or they don't. Yeah.
Unless they
Well-
do something to do with like the working out.
Well, I was just going to say, unless they mark like the independent schools mark for 11 plus exams, that you don't take marks away, but if the working out is correct for it. But I mean, they do that anyway.
Yeah,
So if you
yeah,
do that anyway.
like maths exams tend to be quite, or like those type of specifications. Not so much English. English is a bit, but it's a bit more confusing. But something like, and I think you can be more lenient in English sometimes. But something like maths, they're very specific in terms of the marks that are being allocated and how they're allocated. So they break down pretty much, or most things. So I don't know how they can be more lenient, but
Well, the only way, there'll be two things, won't there? One is that the grade boundaries drop,
yeah, I think that's likely
or the number of topics they're tested on, like we've already discussed, reduces. So it sounds like they're going to do both.
Then let's go on to the advanced material then, because that's part of it as well.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be providing certain,
Yeah.
like a list of what's going to come up.
to be. And more formulae in the exam. So, which is I guess
Well,
it's
very well giving you a formula, but if a child has never used the
Yeah,
formula,
like-
what good is it?
I don't think it matters that much. Like, I mean, it maybe it's. I feel like it's sort of unfair on people who've done their GCSEs a long time ago, because then they're like, oh, but we didn't get these advantages.
But
but
also, you say that, but like if when we start employing people again, when we employ a tutor, for example, we don't just go by grades. They'll do a trial class. We'll make sure their ethos fits in with ours, etc., etc. Most companies will do this. They won't do trial classes, but they'll make sure that there's a probation period, etc. Maybe companies will start bringing in tests, because I think, as it is it the CBI that's been complaining forever that children or young adults are coming out illiterate?
I mean, you're finding
and innumerate.
You're finding on most, if you apply for something, then you generally have to do some type of
Some
test
sort of test.
or assessment, like whether it be your basic numeracy or like so that's almost like practical maths and that kind of thing.
So, well, you have to do it, not just jobs. When I did my teacher training, I had to do a maths and English exam before and we had to do a presentation before they took you on the course.
But I think teaching is actually one of those things where they will try and, it doesn't always work, but they'll try and select people who actually know
a little
know
bit.
the subject
Yeah.
quite well.
But I mean, if I think about all, in my previous life, all my sort of city jobs, I think I only had one exam. The rest was all interview based.
Now it's changed a lot. So
Yeah,
most,
everyone
Yeah,
we
it
speak
was
to is just
getting
doing
into
exam
the-
after exam.
like most of the time, now they do Excel tests, they do
Yeah.
maths tests, they even sometimes do like non-verbal reasoning tests and that kind
Yeah,
of stuff.
they
Like
do.
if you go for like a
Ombudsman
difficult,
does them. Financial Ombudsman does them.
so
And Kent University does them.
but yeah, now it's the only thing is that, or the feedback that I get a lot from students is a lot of them who have A-level now, they haven't had any exams practice really because they didn't have their GCSEs.
Mm-hmm.
So now they're sitting their A-levels and they haven't had really much or any experience doing qualifications, like GCSEs, that type of exam, the high pressure exam. So most of them are quite nervous about that.
I suppose it will disadvantage those children that don't perform well under exams more because they haven't had the practice.
That's what I mean.
Like everybody will be disadvantaged, but
the ones who struggle with exams more, they need more practice than anyone else. The schools are trying to. What I've heard with a lot of students is that they're taking quite a lot of assessments, so they are doing quite a lot of mock exams, maybe more than usual. So
just in case.
Yeah, just to get a bit more exam practice, which is good, I suppose. But it does mean that they're kind of in exam mode all the time, and I do think some rest is needed as well. So they need like an exam, and then they need maybe they need a month off for that because it's so much to have it in one go. And then you're in exam mode all the way till like July.
Yes.
So I think a lot of some people don't work that way. Like they need. Well, I know I get burnt out during exam periods. Like because if I got like a day where I've got like 4 exams or 3 exams, like by the 4th exam, I'm like,
You're frazzled, aren't you?
I'm done.
Yeah.
So that, and I think that happens in monthly periods too. So if you've got loads of exams, like 1 month, and then next month loads of exams, it just takes away like the urgency sometimes, and you just
True.
I don't know, but
True. Well, it'll be interesting to see what the results bring and how much grade inflation will actually be a permanent thing.
I think it will reset somewhat. Because I do think
a couple
that
of years to reset.
I do think the kids are more behind than usual. I'd say so I think it's justifiable. Like when you get into that idea of it's being fair, I do think it's justifiable because I do think that they have been set back slightly. In some cases, a lot.
But I think it goes across the board, doesn't it? Well, I know it goes across the board, and I know the little ones will have time to catch up.
Yeah.
But it's that impact is all
Yeah,
the
no,
way
it
through.
is. It goes permeates right down to
the
ones. But like for instance, I had one student who he was doing higher maths, and then now he's doing foundation in year 11, because I think like last year he said I've got to be honest, I didn't really do anything during lockdown.
I was just thinking actually that the attitude has changed. With a lot of the students, it's like, well, there's such chaos and there's such confusion, and this means nothing anyway. That's the impression I get of particularly GCSEs.
It's going that way with GCSEs. That's another thing I wanted to talk about was because firstly with them providing extra material, and giving, like cutting out bits of exams so there's less to remember. I think it does tie into like the world that we're in now. Because how much stuff do you remember compared to how much stuff you look up?
Look everything up.
Yeah.
So it would have
that's
made,
true.
yeah, the GCSEs obviously would have made more sense even 10 years ago when we did them or whatever.
Yeah, because
We
we
wouldn't
didn't have
be
as
looking-
much information.
No, but we're,
Yeah.
we're,
At our
we're
fingertips.
essentially living like cyborgs. We have an extension of our arm and we just look up whatever we want.
True.
Yeah.
Well,
So
this
cutting
is-
down the memory that required for these exams, like, I don't know, what do you think? Do you think
I mean, it's a valid point, and there has been talk about changing the maths curriculum, particularly so that you don't need. They were looking at changing it so that you don't need to do things like, basic skills like addition, mental maths. You don't need to do, but I still think that that's important.
that's the one thing I would keep.
Yeah. But there were rumours about it changing. When they changed the curriculum, that this is one of the things that they would look at getting rid of, because they're saying, well, everybody uses calculators.
Yeah.
So
But the thing is, it's already there.
Sort of, but then I'll give you an example of a skill that is very useful, but I've noticed people are quite poor at it, or students are estimating.
Yes.
So like,
That's because they don't like to get things wrong.
yeah,
They don't like to keep all their working out. They rub all of that out, so any extra marks is gone.
But that's
but I think
I've
it's,
seen the kids like type in 2 plus 2.
I know. I was just going
And
to
I was like,
say.
but you know what 2 plus 2 is? Like, yeah, I just wanted to make sure. It's like, well, it hasn't changed in
Yeah.
the last.
I know.
Well, it's never 2 plus 2 has always been
But
4.
then-
It takes that confidence away.
But-
So
like,
estimating what you're talking
even
about is
so like
they
even
don't like to be off at all.
I remember doing like even in A-level maths, so first year of A-level, estimating. I still estimated stuff because like for instance, if you have a root, say you've got a cubic or something like that, like a graph, like that. If you still want to I still estimated roots and that kind of thing just off the top of my head. So at least I know, like if I'm using a calculator or something like that my answer makes sense.
Yes.
And then sometimes I just like I look at a student's work and I think, well, that's just impossible. Like, isn't that how did like it's not even a like the answer doesn't even make sense. Like, as in it. In no realm of possibility could that be.
That be right? But it's sort of counterintuitive if they do decide to go down that road, because that's part of your reasoning skills.
Yeah, it's like a non-calculator paper. It's really, I think it's really valuable to be very good at a non-calculator paper. So and in IGCSE they don't have a non-calc paper.
At all.
Yeah, they have 2 calculator papers. I mean, it still requires a lot of thought and that kind of thing, but I do think a non-calculator paper is a good thing, and because the types of questions you get are different, and the reasoning required is sometimes a bit different. Calculator skills are very important, but they've
You
got
need to know what to type in.
Yeah, like, but yeah, like
How do you? Yeah.
yeah, like I think, and also you notice with. Because maths builds on itself. If they can't do a lot of basic things like those mental math skills and stuff like that, then it does affect them in their more advanced.
It does.
And their reasoning and that kind of thing later down the line. But
I just don't think there's enough emphasis in school.
I think it's too dangerous an experiment. So like they like to experiment on and sort of go.
Part of this is. I wouldn't call it an experiment, although I can see why you'd say that. It's more about, well, we need to produce workers that have specific skills.
Yeah.
And
Button pushers. That's what it comes down to.
What is it? What are the skills that are required
Yeah.
for them to be able to do if they exist anymore, a 9-to-5 job that is going to be the foundation of our GDP.
Well, it goes one of two ways, I think. Looking way into the future, it goes into either you're the person using the systems to do the work, like without any, just like on automation, or you're the person creating the systems.
Yes.
And for that, you have to know maths. You just do.
There's a massive dichotomy that either you
Which
need
way
to
you
be
go that way or you
very,
go that way.
very good.
Yeah.
It's the 80-20 rule, so 20% would go that way, 80% would go that way.
Yeah.
And then, well, they don't need that reasoning skill, they're just going to be button pushers, so why bother?
Yeah.
But then that's why, but I think that's why, I don't know though, because to create systems and stuff like that, I think the main, obviously like, there's very, very complex systems that require a lot of mathematics and that kind of thing. But I think it just requires out of the box thinking a lot of the time. And you to be able to identify people who can actually create those systems.
So here's a question. Of all the people that you know have taught in your personal life, etc., what percentage would you say can do out of the box thinking?
Like, I'd remember it's who I know, so probably. So I know a lot of odd people, so probably maybe 10%.
What about you?
10% that could.
I think there's a lot.
Way more.
10% that can think outside the box.
Most people I know. But
But what about students? And you meet thousands
Everyone,
and thousands.
not just on your personal life.
Yeah, like everyone.
out of students?
No, just generally, in total.
It's very to be the average is a weird thing. So for people in personal life, whatever, most of our friends are pretty good at that sort of thing. Most of the students are not.
Yeah.
And I think that is part of what's changed in the last 10 years.
I think
More than 10 years.
We'll call it 10.
I think sometimes though we're overly reliant on technology. So we're overly reliant on looking up information, looking at how to do stuff, and that actually takes away some. It was like I remember it was just easier to rather than look up. I'll give you an example. Suppose you want to master skill in maths or something like that. Like nowadays, you can go onto YouTube and then watch a video and learn how to do it. But
In the old days.
yeah, no, even no, I'm saying that I didn't. That wasn't the first thing that came into my head when I was doing like GCSEs or whatever or A-level.
Because it
So
didn't
I
really exist.
just read a book and I just go, and then I also did a lot of sort of thinking about an example and then going, okay, what's happening here? So more thinking about it.
Problem solving.
Yeah, so like improving
Rather
my
than
problem
being spoon-fed the answer.
rather than just passively sort of
So
absorbing
how much
it.
of that do you think is because of the school you two went to? If you think of your friends that didn't go to your school,
I don't think
or
it's.
to
I don't think
a
it's to do with.
normal school,
They're the same as us.
are they?
Although I'll tell you something that is
It's the
different.
technology.
Like a forest. One time I read a maths module and then I just honestly the teacher was just like, you've just got to learn this maths module. I just can't read the book, and so I had to like independently sort of think on my
Yeah,
feet.
it's quite common in a lot of the independent schools.
But then I don't think state schools would do. I don't think a state school teacher would do that. Sometimes
They wouldn't be allowed to do that.
Yeah.
We had I can't think who, it was Sharon. I
Yeah.
don't know if you remember Sharon. Really good teacher. In her school, she changed schools fairly quickly after she started with us. But in her school, they were not allowed to use textbooks. The teacher had to come up with all of the questions. State school, I think it was. Imagine having to do that on a daily basis. You'd never get that in an independent school.
But
Never.
then, can you prepare? So you prepare before class, and
Of course.
you don't just write them up. But.
No, you can prepare before class, but I remember her telling me they weren't allowed to use textbooks.
Yeah, you
But
do,
I think
you do it
this
for a
was-
year, then your next
Well-
year's you'd have to redo it every year.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose you
I've
keep your
noticed
resources,
that,
don't
like,
you?
for
Yeah.
I've tried, like, I've experimented a little bit, like, so, reasoning, for instance. Sometimes I think, okay, well, it might be a good idea for the student to read the instructions first and just see, like, how well they can work out what to do. And then some of them can do it, but some of them just can't do it. And they're designed to be easy to follow. So that sometimes worries me a bit, because I'm like,
Because they're completely led by the nose in school, so they're
Yeah.
not used to doing it.
yeah, it's like
Not that they can't do it, it's that it doesn't enter their heads.
yeah, it's like if you haven't a lot of the time we're preparing children for independent school exams. They need to think independently. They need to be able to read.
Of course they do.
And the types of questions sometimes involve you looking at reading something quite complicated, where they sketch out, like, this is this, and you're going to have to learn this part, and these are the things that you need to know, and this is some knowledge, and then apply it here. So it can be quite useful it's extremely useful to be able to read and understand what you read and then apply it. And
Extremely useful to be able to read.
yeah. Well, like, you read, but like some people read, but they don't understand what they're reading. So
Well, this is the common thing, isn't it? That children stop reading when they leave primary school, and so their reading age doesn't really develop
Found that a
as they
lot.
develop. So the vocabulary they're using, the sentence structure they're using, even our GCSE students.
A-level. Right.
My gosh, you just think,
Yeah.
I've got a year 5 who can write better than this.
Yeah. It's just,
Our year 5s aren't normal year 5s though.
No, I know.
Yeah.
So we're coming kind of towards the last part of the episode. I want to run through 5 things here from the government website. We'll do one at a time, and then you just give me a quick reaction of what you think about it. So changes to coursework. Non-exam assessment and fieldwork requirements are adjusted with flexibility in some subjects. Non-exam assessment
that
and
might be-
fieldwork requirements have been adjusted.
So when
that
they've
may be-
geography projects, etc. So if they've got to do a field trip, they've not been able to do
that's fair enough. Yeah.
Flexibility in some, okay. Support materials. So students will get formula and equation sheets in some exams and won't have to memorise as much. Well, we kind of spoke
But
about
I think
that.
that's not too much. And to be honest, the people who do remember the formulas and stuff like that, they'll still have a slight advantage, because they'll have internalised it a bit more, and they'll be quicker to apply it. So
I would agree. You're more likely to understand the application of it if you've
sort of internalised it
Yes,
and used
if
it a
you've-
lot.
and not just committed it to memory, but actually internalized.
But it is useful, because, like, if you have, like, in an exam situation, you might panic, and then you might, like, even if you've used it a lot, not understood, and understood it completely, you might still forget something.
All right. So I'm going to run through the next couple. Optional content. So there'll be less content or fewer topics for students to learn in some GCSEs.
I think it's fine, but it's a shame. But I understand why they've been.
The only issue with that is, like you said, if it's the foundation of your A-level,
Well, yeah, like
you've missed.
I
the foundation's not as solid.
I think, like, it for those who are taking it to a high level, so then it's more of, I think that's a little unfortunate. But then for the majority of students, especially for foundation students, I think it's a blessing.
Yeah. So this is where the fairness issue comes in. It's fair to the
Majority.
foundation majority,
I'd say
but
it's majority.
not fair to the top.
I'd say the top students suffer a little more, but they also may get better grades. So, like,
Advanced information. So exam boards will give information on the focus of exams for most subjects to help students revise. Advanced information.
But if they've reduced the content already, Are you saying that advanced information is where the content is reduced?
What they did is most of schools have sort of assumed, apart from say like English, because that takes quite a lot of time to go through text and all that. For like maths, they've kind of taught them normally, more or less.
Yes.
But then now, because they know the exact topics, I think they're going to concentrate double down on those topics, which isn't too. When I look at the foundation list, for instance, I think a lot of those are important things, like like things like ratio, proportion. Like they're things that make sense in the foundation exam.
Yeah.
If anything, the foundation exam is usually very kind of difficult.
I would struggle if I had to take out something out of the foundation maths exam. I would struggle to know what to take out.
I don't think I'd struggle to take things out, but yeah, because I've got a foundation class, so. But I think they're focusing on pretty much the correct topics. It's just but they haven't taken out that many topics really.
Yeah.
So it's.
And I guess the question is, if the majority of schools have taught everything anyway, fine, you double down, etc., and you get a higher grade. But really, are you doing the children a disservice if schools
I've got to be honest, it's kind of lip service. It's just because knowing the topics doesn't make you good at maths. like knowing the topics that come up doesn't make you good at maths. Is the ability to apply the topic, even in foundation. Like a lot of the questions involve quite a lot of thinking through the question and understanding the meaning of it.
That's generally true in maths, but it's something like history or geography, knowing this,
But it's also about taking that, like you could test a very narrow area of something, but you still work out who the better historians are.
Of course.
Because
I think it's easier in essay subjects anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Just very quickly, generous grading. So exams will be graded more generously this year, providing a safety net for students. Safety net is a word or pair of words that have been coming up.
That's the phrase that's constantly
I think it's lip service. It's safety just net. Like they need something to go, okay, it's not going to be so bad this year, or whatever. Don't worry about it. Even though we've got exams this year, it's going to be fine.
Easing them in
So
okay.
Sorry, go on.
I was just going to run through.
I'll just quickly read this out. Our aim is to return to a pre-pandemic grade profile, but we do not think it would be fair on 2022 students to do so all in one go, given the disruption they've experienced. We will aim, therefore, to return broadly in 2 steps. So they're taking the average mark, the average of 2019 and 2021 results for each subject, and it looks like they're basing their grade boundaries on that.
Okay, so 3 more questions, just a yes or no.
Okay.
Do you think it's fair?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, me too. Do we need this many GCSEs? With, like we spoke about, the memory and smartphones doing most of the stuff now, like, do we?
Yes.
You think they should continue?
I think yes.
Yeah. I
If
agree.
anything, I don't think that'd be enough.
I agree. And then the teacher assessments moving forward after this year, do you think they should stick around? Or do you think it should just be purely exam based?
Yes, I think they should.
What percentage? How would you weigh it?
Okay.
I would weigh 40% teacher assessment, 60%,
Exam, yeah.
or 30-70.
Or, 30-70.
I was going to go 30-70. So we're all agreed on all 3 points.
I do think, I think teacher assessments can actually be valuable, because you see how the child is working throughout the year, and I think that's an important gauge. Like, it might not be everything, but it is. I think it is important for the students to form good relationships with their tutors or teachers. That's how society is, isn't it?
That's it. When they go into a job, that's exactly what they're going to have to do.
They've got to do their homework. They've got to, it encourages them more. So I think it'll improve their overall understanding of the subject. So I'm in favour of it for that reason.
Very, very good one-word answer.
Well, I did say yes. And then you wanted more.
All right, we'll leave it there. Some of the sources and information that we've used today we'll leave in the description. It's the end of episode 10. Thanks for watching.
See you again.
See you next time.
Bye.